Cedric, thank you so much for joining me. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm going to enjoy listening to your lovely accent.
It's French. I'm from Brussels.
So listen, before we start, in case there's anybody out there who doesn't know about base jumping, what is that?
Well, base jumping is a young sport. It started, I think, in the early 80s. It's jumping from a fixed object with a parachute, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here speaking to you. It's derived from skydiving and jumping from an airplane, which is a bit less dangerous. And then base jumping is the next step or the next level. And it's jumping. Base is an acronym for building, antenna, span, and earth. So it's always a fixed platform. It's most of the time lower than a regular skydive. And yeah, I think that the margin for error is a little bit smaller as well, but it's way more exciting.
Well, I didn't know that what base stood for. That's really interesting to know. And I mean, that is scary for me, but were you interested in that from a young age?
My dream was to fly. I've always, my dream was to fly. I remember I was at school and I think I was 6 or 7. And I told one of my teacher, well, I want to fly. And she told me, but people can't fly. So in other words, you have to stop dreaming, because it was my dream. And I think I like to break the rules. So I continued to dream. And after university, I moved to the US to become a pilot, helicopter pilot, because that was my way of flying and chasing my dream. And then one day, well, everything changed because I had an emergency landing. I had to land really fast. When something goes wrong in a helicopter, it's not really made to fly. There are a lot of moving parts. You land. And I landed on a very small airport in the middle of nowhere, and people were skydiving. And I thought, I have to try this, because this is also flying. And for me, it was like love at first sight, because I was really flying my body. I had more freedom. I think I'm obsessed with freedom, not only physical freedom or financial freedom, but also emotional freedom. This is I think the highest form of freedom. And I thought it was more exciting. I didn't see myself as a commercial pilot all my life. You know, you get into a kind of a routine. So I started skydiving and I quit flying helicopter. I'm still flying. I started back a few years ago in Europe, but only for pleasure as a private pilot. But and from there, I was chasing my dream of flying. And that was for me very close to my dream, and for me, it was not an end. It was more a way to pursue an adventurous and interesting and exciting life.
I agree with what you say about helicopters. I don't know how they get up, and they are scary, certainly when they have a crash or something goes wrong. But you actually took it a bit further, because you fly now in a wingsuit.
Well, yes, I think I was looking for next step. So I started skydiving. The year after, I moved back to Belgium and I started base jumping. And I think I back then I was the first in Belgium. I was one of the first in the world to base jump. And I think I jumped from every building, every antenna, because Belgium is flat. We don't have any mountains, so it was very urban. It was very mission impossible kind of thing, because we were like climbing during the night and jumping at night, and sometimes we got chased by the police. No, I do this with like authorization, so you get a little bit older and wiser. And then the year after, I saw a picture of a French guy with a wingsuit, and that's literally a suit with wings. It's like a little airplane, and it's pressurized by air. It's the same technique as a parachute. And I thought, I have to try this. This looks like, this is even closer to my dream of flying. And I remember I built my first wingsuit myself in my garage with I had some nylon and some zippers, and my friend the friend who from the picture helped me actually to build and make my very first wingsuit. It has changed. We have like much better technology, much better material. And these are literally little airplanes. I have a lot of friends who are pilots, jet fighter pilots, airline pilots, helicopter pilots. And when they see this, they really tell me, this is it. People can fly. We still have a parachute. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here talking to you. So we still use a parachute to land safely. And we have, for people who are like a little bit interested in flying, but we have a glide ratio of 4:1. So its glide ratio is your horizontal speed versus your vertical speed. So we have a horizontal speed of 220 kilometers per hour, depending on the angle of attack. And we only fall at 45, 50, 60 kilometers per hour. So it's really changing the whole sport. We're not like falling straight to earth like a brick. We're really like, we create lift. We have a leading edge, we have a trailing edge. We fly.
Wow. But so what's the longest flight you've done?
Well, the higher you jump, the longer you can fly. I think my longest flight was from the Eiger North Face, probably 3 minutes. I did some really interesting and high jumps in the Dolomites. Maybe you can reach like 3-4 minutes. It's very intense. It's like just very comparable to a really big wave. So it's very short. It's very intense. You have to be extremely focused. You have to be extremely connected with yourself. You have with the environment, because it's very risky.
I was going to ask you about that, because when I first started actually in this industry, when I first started working in a speaker bureau, one of the first people I worked with was Adrian Nicholas, who has sadly lost his life. Has it got less dangerous since he was flying?
Yes, I think we have much more knowledge. We know more about but it's still risky. But I think life is a risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And a lot of people tell me, you're gonna die, but I tell them, well, everybody's gonna die. Nobody is coming out alive, So at least make it exciting and interesting. And for me, it was a way to live a very inspired and fulfilled life. This was my way, and still is, to know how far can I go, how far can I push my limits. You don't have to jump from an airplane or from a building to know how far you can go. But I think it's interesting in anything you do is just pushing yourself to become better. And therefore you have to take risks. You have to be bold.
So I want to talk about fear, though, because our natural fear of falling, we're born with that. And you're literally falling out of the sky every time you fly at some point. Okay, you've attached to a parachute. But how do you overcome your fear? And what do you think fear really is?
Well, fear is a very normal emotion. A lot of people talk about like negative emotions or positive emotions. I don't really like that, because it's not negative or positive. It simply has a very clear function. And fear in my environment, it makes me aware of the danger. It makes me aware you're onto something really dangerous. You have to be prepared. You have to be trained. You have to be focused. So for me, fear keeps me alive. I always tell people, the day that I won't feel fear anymore, I will quit, because then you become stupid. So fear for me, it's a very useful, very functional emotion. The big problem is that it's, for most of us, And believe me, I feel fear like everyone. I'm not a special person. I don't have supernatural powers. I don't have a brain issue either, I think. But for me, I feel fear. I consider myself to be a very normal human being. And honestly, I don't like the feeling, I don't like the emotion of fear. And most of us, when we feel fear, our brain is going to tell us, stop, don't do it. So it's going to basically paralyze you, and you're not going to take action, because the first thing is the first reaction. It's a fight or flight response. It comes from the prehistory. It's a very small part of the brain, the amygdala, and it tells you, just don't do it. You're going to die. The whole thing for me is to be able, and very quickly, to transform I'm going to talk again about negative fear, or a primal fear, into energy, into something that's going to drive me to take action. And I have a strategy for that. I have an action plan that I'm using all the time, and it works. And even though I don't like the emotion of fear, what I really like in what I'm doing is being able to confront my fear, being able to push myself, and in the end, being able to take control over my fear. And for me, when you are able to take control over your everyday fears, everyday like stress and fear, you take control over your life. This is for me the first step to be, you become bold, and you generate the power to basically become anyone you want, and do anything you want.
So I'd like to go back to, you said you have a formula. In fact, I believe you have a method which has 3 power skills. Is this what you're talking about that you use?
No, the power skills is more like how to reach excellence, how to make a difference, because we all have hard skills. We all have, especially in corporate environment, you see a lot of people with a lot of competencies, a lot of hard skills. They're really good at what they do, but how do you go the extra mile? How do you go from good to great? And what I've seen the last 15 years, I've been working with like really game changers from all kinds of environment, whether it's a high risk environment like mine, or a business environment, or master chef, or even artists. These people are using the same fundamental tools, what I call power skills, all the time. So your environment is not really important, because if you want to go from good to great, if you want to reach operational excellence in anything you do, you're going to have to use these power skills.
Are you able to tell us what those 3 power skills are?
Well, those power skills, and it's something that comes back all the time. The first power skill is your mindset. And your mindset is really going to define and make difference between success and failure. If you don't have the right mindset, and I talk here about fixed mindset and exponential mindset, or limitless mindset. We all have a bit of both. So a lot of times we have to challenge ourselves, and basically to push ourselves to go from a fixed mindset, comfort zone, to a limitless exponential mindset. And someone who has a exponential mindset is someone who can go much further than you could think. So to make it really short, someone with a fixed mindset is convinced that talent and skills are predetermined and unchangeable. Someone with a fixed mindset is someone who has a lot of limiting beliefs. And I always tell people, the only limits you have are the one you set yourself. So the first thing to move, and it's transformational leadership in a way, to move from a fixed to an exponential mindset, or a limitless mindset, is to be aware, what are my limiting beliefs, to destruct these beliefs, and to reconstruct different beliefs. That's the first step. And that's how you transform from inside. It's not change. change comes from outside. It's really from inside.
And which is the same thing that you use, I'm sure, when you're overcoming the fear of the risks that you take. And I've got a question for you as well regarding your flying again. Do many women fly?
It's interesting because not as much as men. It's still a very male-dominated sport. But I did a TED Talk 2 years ago, and the theme was, are women equal when it comes to risk-taking? In other words, are they equally bold, especially in a corporate environment, in a business environment, than men? So I did a whole research on that. I studied the whole thing, and I came to the conclusion that there's a lot of preconditioned tendencies. The first thing is genetics. Women have less testosterone. So this is pure biology. You have testosterone, but you have less testosterone. It also, I think, a question of ego. I think men still have more ego. They have to prove themselves all the time, like alpha male. You have women also, like alpha women for sure, with ego. And I think you need a healthy ego to chase your dreams and to go where you want to go. So ego is not always that bad. But there's a very thin line between healthy and bad ego. And ego in my sport is lethal. I've seen many people dying because of ego. So and then there is also it's also, I think, a cultural thing. When in the prehistory, women were caretakers, and men were hunters. So there's a whole cultural, social thing, and the whole evolution, and we put women, they have to stay at home. It's a like very simply put. And also I think it's when we grow up. If you go in a toy store, you go on the left side, you have dolls for girls, and then you have cars for boys, or trucks. And so we are raised in a society where very, very early we make a big difference between girls and boys. And also when you look at parents who are raising their kids, and very simple example, but if you go to a park and there's a girl climbing on a tree, most of the time the parents will tell, hey, be careful, this is not for you. And if it's a little boy, they're gonna be like, okay, it's a boy, you can do it. So we are raised in a society where women or girls, when their kids shouldn't take as many risks. But my conclusion was, yes, women, and when they take risks, when they're really good at what they do, most of the time they will be better than men, because they have things that we don't have, or that we have to maybe to be more self-aware to create. It's like empathy. It's emotional intelligence. And I think today leadership, it's about inspiring other people. It's about empathy. It's about emotional intelligence. And you need a lot of self-awareness to create emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. I'm going to come back to leadership with you in a moment, but I think we mentioned one power skill. There's two others. So you mentioned mindset. What are the other two?
The other two are focus. And focus in my sport is also a question of survival. And I make a really big difference between like your inner focus. It's when you think about focus, you think about concentration, your attention span. In what I see today in corporate environment, in a business environment, it's becoming very, very difficult to concentrate on a task, because we have a lot of distractions, way too many distractions. And the big issue, and I'm not saying distractions are bad, because we need sometimes to be distracted, but we don't choose our distractions. We get chosen by our distractions. And this is lethal for your productivity. We're most of the time, and I see this all the time, people are in multitasking. And multitasking is not only like destroying your productivity, that's very clear, but it's also damaging your brain. In multitasking in my environment, in my sport, is lethal. And when I look at people who are really like thinking really clear, who are really absorbed by what they do, who are really like creative, really productive, efficient people, they are in monotasking. So
Yeah.
that's one type of focus. And the interesting question to ask yourself when you self-reflect after a day of work, was I busy or productive?
Yeah.
A lot of times people are just busy.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. And it's interesting because you say in your line, focus is lethal, but actually lack of focus is lethal. Lack of focus in business is lethal to business too. It
Yes,
will
for
kill your
sure.
business. So it's
Well,
actually brilliant. What's your, I'm dying to know the third one. Tell us the third power.
well, I'm gonna finish
Oh,
regarding
sorry.
focus. So you have inner focus, and then you have like external focus. And if you want to be really productive, if you want to like stay creative, innovative, you have to focus on your priorities. You need to have a very, very selective behavior. And what I see is that like really high achievers, game changers in any kind of industry or field, these are people who they're like laser focused on what matters most, on priorities. In every day they ask themselves, what is today my priority? This is the most important thing. So it's about having a like a very, very selective behavior. Sometimes we're all master of yes. You know, we live in a society where you feel the need, and you're kind of in you're obliged to say yes, yes, and you want to be everywhere, and you want to do everything. And when you look at your planning, you want to like have it completely filled, because otherwise you think, I'm going to lose time. Well, no, let it breathe. Sometimes do nothing. Sometimes just calm your brain. You're gonna think more, and it's all about doing less but better. That's for me my biggest. Every year I want to do less but much better. It sounds strange, but
No, it's great. It's great. I love that. I love that. Okay.
and then you have a lot of external focus on relevant information, focus on solutions, focus on things you control. And I can name you like 25 things. That's external focus. The more focus you have, the better you will be, period.
Fantastic. No, fantastic. And the third power skill.
And the third one is more like in team environment. That's the trust edge. If you trust each other, you're gonna win together. And that's what I see in like really high performing teams, like in Formula One, or in like football teams. I did a team building with the Red Devils before the summer, before the Red Belgian national team football team. They're really good, by the way. They're like probably number one in the world right now. And the first thing we worked on was trust. And you could think, is there room for improvement? There is always room for improvement. And it's a very diverse team. And I think when you look at companies nowadays, a team is very diverse. So how are you going to trust each other? What are the triggers? What are the tools? How can you create trust within your team? Because if you have a team of stars and you create trust, well, you're going to create a star team. And that's the whole idea. So it's all about communication. It's all about being fully accountable for everything. That's the first thing we worked on. I was asking the coach, Mr. Martinez, what is your biggest challenge here? Well, I want that every player is fully accountable for everything. Don't blame each other. Lead by example. You walk the talk, talk the walk. If you promise something, keep your promises. Very simple things, but sometimes you need to be reminded, and you need to raise your awareness about, okay, simple thing like get to know the people you work with. A lot of time I have companies calling me, hey, we have a trust issue. Can you come and solve it? Okay, how many time do we have? 1 hour. You're not gonna like solve an issue of trust within a team in 1 hour. Take the time, stop the operational, and just take a step back, connect with the people you work with, and communicate in a very efficient, transparent way. Listen. This is the highest form of communication, is listening.
You know, and I could listen to you all day. So let's recap. The 3 power skills then are mindset, focus, and trust. Thank you. I think they're really brilliant, really succinct, and absolutely essential. So tell me as well about bold leadership, because that's another area you talk about.
Well, it's all connected, because I think today there's a lot of changes in every industry. You know, the life expectancy of most of the companies have never been so short. Like I just read something, it was a research, and 80% of the companies won't exist within 20 years. So if you want to disrupt, if you want to create, if you want to progress, if you want to innovate, you will have to take risks. If you don't take risks, you become complacent, and complacency will kill you. It's going to make your company obsolete. So you have to create bold leaders at all levels. And for me, it's about like very calculated, very educated risk taking. We all have to take risks at one point. I take a physical risk, which is very clear, but you can take an emotional risk. When I'm speaking in front of people, it's kind of an emotional risk. If I'm writing a book and I publish it, which is happening, it's an emotional risk. You know, you're going to be confronted with like criticism, and like for an artist, it's the same. Everything we do, you're going to get married, it's a risk. Okay. But you have to take risk. At one point, you have to let go. You know, I always tell people, embrace uncertainty. We all look for certainty. But certainty will it's very comfortable feeling, as I'm certain of something, but certainty won't bring you anywhere.
Absolutely.
Certainty keeps you sharp, keeps you focused, and uncertainty, in my case, and I see this with every leader, it's gonna push you to reinvent yourself to stay relevant.
So Cedric, listen, I could talk to you all day. There is so much depth of knowledge there, and we've come to the end of our time. So I want to finish on, you mentioned a book. Now, I know it's called Dare to Jump. Yes. Tell me about your book, because I'm sure that you are very proud and it's been hard work for you. So tell us a bit about the book.
Well, the book is based on the method we just talked about, which are these power skills. I'm also talking a lot about how do you deal with fear, how do you deal with stress, how do you deal with pressure, how do you want to stay relevant? That's what I just said. And how do you perform when it really matters? How do you go the extra mile? How do you excel in what you do? In my experience comes from my environment as a extreme athlete or adventure athlete, you know, from a high risk environment, but also from working with elite athletes, master chefs, very creative people, managers, CEOs, organizations from all over the world. And for me, it's like a kind of a best of. This is what these people are using to be and to become the best version of themselves, and to keep learning, to keep growing. For me, leadership is about growing as a person. It's a personal enrichment. It's about fulfillment. You know, I talk a lot about performance, and in a way, what is performance? It's different for everyone. You know, we're all climbing a ladder, the ladder of life. Just make sure the ladder is on the right side of the wall. Because if you're not who you are at work, if you're not aligned with your core values, if you don't have an impact on the world, if you don't make a difference, you're not a leader. Leadership is about making a difference. It's about leaving an impact, and it's about inspiring others to grow. And if you can, at the end of your career, it's about your legacy. You know, how do you want to be remembered? And if you're really intentional about all these like powerful questions, you're gonna have a whole new dimension and a whole new it's about fulfillment. I see a lot of people, believe me, even in professional sports, who are really like at the top of their game, but they're not happy, they're not fulfilled. So for me, performance is about being fulfilled.
Cedric, I cannot wait to read it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, then I could speak for hours, and I really like. It's about sharing. For me, it's about sharing.
Thank you.